It's interesting listening to you both talking about that, because I had a fascinating conversation a few years ago with Joe Biden, who had just lost his son Beau to brain cancer. And obviously he'd also, many years before, lost his wife and baby daughter in a car crash. And his two sons survived and were badly hurt and so on. And everyone knows the story, but I'd written a column, a newspaper column, about Beau Biden after he died, because he used to come on my old show at CNN. And I just said, look, this guy was an amazing guy. He'd been a state's attorney general. He'd been an Iraq war hero. He had a lovely family. He was going right to the top, I felt, politically. He may even have become president candidate, perhaps. And I said, he'll now be the best president America will never know they could have had. And I wrote this column, heartfelt. I liked him very much. I thought he was very impressive. And Joe Biden called me. He was vice president at the time. And I'd never met him. And he had a 15, 20-minute conversation with me. And I asked him, I said, I've got 4 children. I don't know how you would ever deal with losing a child. You've had to do this twice, and you lost your first wife. How do you deal with it? And he said, you know, it's interesting. He said, as I talk to you, I have in front of me a cartoon strip, Hagar the Horrible. And it was in 2 parts. And in one part, Hagar was on a boat that was floundering on the rocks. And he had his trident, and he was raising it to the skies in very stormy conditions and shouting at the gods, why me? And in the second part of the cartoon, the gods shout back, why not? And he said he got annoyed originally when he saw that. When his dad had found it in a flea market. He got annoyed. He thought it was insensitive. And then the more he thought about it, the more he realized what his dad was saying, which is you cannot rationalize what's happened to you. You can't try and work out why it's happened to you. Stuff happens like this to people all the time. In a way, it's different, but the way that you talked to Michaela about her condition, it's kind of similar, is that you didn't waste time and energy trying to rationalize this or explain why you'd been singled out. It was just a case of it's happened, we've got to deal with it.
Well, I went to Jerusalem with a friend of mine, Jonathan Pageau, and Pageau is a very brilliant man. And we walked the Via Dolorosa, which is the route of Christ's Passion with its 12 stations. And each station is a kind of, is a microcosm of suffering. And then, of course, the entire journey culminates in the most unjust suffering imaginable. And that's what the story is. The Christian Passion is the story of the most unjust suffering imaginable. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with you? And the answer is, that's going to happen to you. There's going to be unjust suffering in your life. And you're called upon to radically embrace that and to say yes. And that's even the case if it's your children who are called upon to make the sacrifice. And that's the story of Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac. God calls on Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. And, you know, that seems like a bit much, but you have to offer your children to the world. You have to offer your children to be destroyed by the world. You have to say yes to that radically, full-heartedly. And the more you do that, weirdly, paradoxically, the more you do both of those, accept that for yourself, accept that for your children, welcome it, the less catastrophic this sacrifice has to be. It's so paradoxical. Well, you think about it, you know, if you protect your children unduly, you weaken them. If you let them encounter the world and the micro tragedies that go along with that encounter, let's say, they get strong.
Yeah.
And there's no limit to that. There's no upper end. And so that's why in the Judeo-Christian tradition, for example, you're enjoined to take up your cross and bear it and to walk uphill nonetheless. And the reason for that is there is no better alternative. Of course, you have to say yes to life. And that means saying yes to some pretty brutal realities.